Hello, Don fans. Ian here with a special Don the Stat episode. Well, Essendon fans are used to having the promise of the draft being the highlight of the year, and unfortunately 2026 has become a season where that promise has become a blazing light in what has otherwise been a dim and dismal season. Fortunately, tonight I am joined by one of my favourite people, the man who I've consistently dubbed the fifth Beatle, much to his chagrin, of Don the Stat, the incomparable Rick Edwards. Not only has Rick been the premier Essendon track watcher for close to a decade now, he has also become one of the closest watchers of draft talent and has been compiling his own draft rankings, which he'll be revealing exclusively tonight on this episode. Rick, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. It's good to be here. Yeah, it's been a tough year, hasn't it, for Bomber supporters? So I've already had one eye on the draft for a little while, and I've been to 4 games actually this weekend. So I've got a bit that I can share with you.
Excellent. Really looking forward to picking your brain with the draft talent. As we said, it's going to be a big focus for Essendon fans for the remainder of this year, particularly as I think with the way in which the season seems to be playing out. I almost think you can lock in a top 2 draft pick for the Bombers, given that 16th and above on the ladder are already at 4 wins. We're only on 1. It's probably us and Richmond that are really competing for that number 1 pick there, wouldn't you say, Rick?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. You're right. We are locked in for either 1 or 2, and I think because of that, Matt Rosa and even Dean Solomon could start sitting down and having coffee with Harry Van Hattum, I'd suggest. Even now I can see the headline, Ian, something like When Harry Met Solly.
That's a great one. Well, look, let's, you're as much as you're being focused on draft talent, you're still an Essendon person at heart. So let's get some Bombers chat out of the way first. I guess, how has you seen the season so far, Rick?
Yeah, it's been the least enjoyable season I can remember. It's just been a real grind, and even getting to training, it's been hard as well. But yeah, it's just been so disappointing, and there hasn't been much joy, has there?
No, and I think sometimes I forget that I'm one of the few Essendon fans who has actually seen a win live in the past 12 months, because I was over at Gather Round for that great win over the Demons. But for every other Essendon fan that's been going to games since Dreamtime last year, they haven't tasted any success. I mean, obviously, we just came off that game against Carlton. We got quite close and couldn't quite seal the deal. So, yeah, I think we're desperate for success. I think both the players as well as fans are really desperate for some form of success, even if in the cold light of rationality, probably finishing around the bottom is best for what the club is long term in terms of getting in top end talent. It's still not a fun experience to be going through.
No, it's not. It's not fun at all. But we are going to have potentially some top end talent, and I'm really excited about this draft. But I'm sure we'll get into that a bit later.
Yeah, let's do it. Look, before we get into that in a bit more detail, we're coming off a couple of weeks since Brad Scott was sacked. So, you've been around the bush, Rick, and you've experienced a lot of coach sackings as an Essendon fan. When you heard that Brad was sacked, what were your thoughts about it?
I was shocked initially. I'm pretty optimistic and half glass full when it comes to Bombers, and I've been supporting Brad Scott for his term at the club, and I believe the message that they were selling, that we had a plan and we're just going to stick to that, and it might be painful at times. But since they made the decision, I've actually come round to the realisation that it was the right thing to do. But for me, the whole Brad Scott era, I liken it to a 3-layer cake, and the top layer is the occasional Dow win over a bottom 4 side. The middle layer is honourable losses, and the base, the biggest part of the cake, is built on disappointment and mediocrity. That's how it felt for me. There was no cherry on top. There was no chocolate icing or anything.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was in the same boat in terms of, I think, the message about trying to build something that was sustainable long term was something that I was really pleased to hear. And unfortunately, what that meant was you were stripping the side back. You were taking away sort of the middle tier players that were keeping us up and around sort of that mid-table, those mid-table finishes that weren't really doing anything for us. Unfortunately, what that meant was that we found ourselves down the bottom of the ladder with really difficult and challenging performances. And then on top of that, you had the injury crisis that we suffered from last year. And this year, I can't remember anything really like it in terms of just how often we're getting injuries. And especially this year, they've all just sort of been bad luck injuries, haven't they? There's been very few soft tissue injuries. It's just, a player goes down in a contest or, goes back with the flight and like Archie May the other week and dislocates a shoulder. Yeah, it's just, you look at some teams and they're sort of, stepping between the raindrops. They're getting so much luck with regards to those sort of injuries, but we just can't catch a break. And when you're already, as inexperienced a side as we are, you can't afford to lose, your top end talent players. But, if you think about who we played on the weekend in terms of Carlton, they're really only missing one or two from their best 22 without going through the numbers. At least, a quarter of our best side and probably more are currently sitting on the sidelines because they're just not fit to play. So it's really hard when you are a side that's trying to build something, when you lack that ability to have your best players on the park consistently. It's really hard to actually get anything out of it. But that said, yeah, I sort of get where they got to with having to sack Scott and realising that unfortunately he wasn't going to be the person to take us forward in the long term and wanting to get that person in place as quickly as possible. So, yeah, it's just one of those things. The overall message of what Brad was trying to achieve was really good. Just the parts that we're trying to put that together started to really lose momentum. I think I've come around to being okay with the decision.
We've both sort of reached the same point, haven't we? But you're quite right about the injuries. That's certainly not within Brad Scott's control, and we tried to rectify that by appointing Matt Innes. But it's not just a win-loss situation over the last 4 seasons. For me, we just don't have any things to celebrate at all. We can't even say that there's been an advancement in the game plan, that, now we're at least a good defensive side. Our skills have just been consistently bad, to the point where I was quite strong on this pre-season 2025 on your pod, and actually got clipped by the club for saying that I thought the skills were ordinary. Even if you look at all Australians, we haven't had anything to celebrate there either. Only Zach Merritt in 2023 managed to make the All-Australian side. I think list management has just been a dumpster fire. Harry Jones in 2025 getting 2 years. Massimo D'Ambrosio, him slipping through our fingers. And then the other thing, Ian, which has come to light very recently, and I've heard this from different people telling me that the players, and it's been picked up by the media now, former players weren't welcome at the club in the rooms. And I think that was just so disappointing to find that sort of some of the important pieces in our history and in our culture haven't been made to feel welcome.
Yeah, it was disappointing to hear that, and I think you've got to try and find the right balance. Because I think, as much as Ben Rutten, had problems as a coach, I think that was one of the things that he was really good at. He was really trying to embrace, the past nature of the club. I think I remember was either his first year or his second year, he had a past player who had every number hand the jumper over to the current player. Which I thought was something really nice there. So, we've had, people come from outside Essendon trying to engage with the Essendon history. And obviously what we've heard with regards to Brad Scott was there was a real pushback against that old Essendon nature. I guess it's hard because neither of them in the end ended up performing as coach or had the results that you would want as a coach. But I guess you've got to try and find that right balance where you are acknowledging the past history of the club without letting it hold you back either. It's a real difficult balance to strike.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, look, obviously that has then led to a lot of talk about James Hird coming back as coach. It really has split the fan base. There are some people who are really strong for Hird coming back, and I think strong to the point where it seems to be more about James Hird himself rather than Essendon, the club, or for the betterment of Essendon, the club. But I can see arguments for Hird coming back. I think there's strengths that he has that other coaches or other potential head coaches won't have. And obviously there's the people who are really against James Hird coming back given his time out of the game. And obviously what happened in his first stints as coach. I guess where do you stand on James Hird coaching Essendon heading into next year?
Yeah, I'm open to it, but I'm sort of not locked into it. There's a few things for me. The first thing is it's been peddled a little bit in the media that, he's been out of the game 10 years, so he's a bit out of touch. It's not like he's been living in a cave for 10 years and not been to the footy or seen any vision. And, it's not like he's been relying only on stick figure interpretive drawings of AFL games. So I think that's an agenda that's been pushed that's not quite right. He actually has been doing some good things at Port Melbourne. And the one anecdote I heard recently was that a mum was talking about her son who played in a pretty good local footy competition for a big club for a couple of years and then moved to Port Melbourne a year or two ago. And at her words, this mum said that her son had learnt more from James Hird in his time at Port Melbourne than in any of the other 6 or 7 years he's been at footy clubs. So, he's a really hands-on sort of teacher. My final point with her that I've been thinking about, it is his motivation and his passion that I think are really big strengths, obviously. And I'm reminded of a quote one of our former coaches, talking about coaches, John Worsfold, said at an Essendon AGM, and he said, quote, "A platform can be built from the bricks others throw at you." So Hurd has certainly got plenty to prove. And as I said, I'm comfortable if they do go with him, but I'm not what you would call, I haven't got my heart set on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you can build a platform from the bricks thrown at you, James Hird could probably build the Taj Mahal with the amount of bricks that have been tossed his way. I guess I'm not going to ask you to have a preference of who coaches the club, but just in a general sense, if it's not James Hird, do you prefer an experienced coach? So in the Longmire, Simpson, Hinkley mould, or Buckley seems to be putting his hands up quite strongly, or do you want a new one, a la a James Kelly or an Enright or something along those lines, that's sort of done an apprenticeship and is ready to go? You don't have to name names, but yeah, do you have a general preference between either of those options?
Yeah, I don't mind naming names, Humi. Definitely an experienced coach. I like John Longmire. I mean, he led the Swans to the finals in 12 of his 14 seasons. I mean, you can't sort of deny that when you read that on a CV. So that's who I lean towards. I'm not so hot on Simpson and Buckley. Maybe. What about you? Are you sort of leaning towards an experienced coach or a first time?
I am concerned about the experienced coaches and how much they're going to be wanting it. I'm right. I'm concerned about Simpson as well. I think he's going to put his hand up. I think he's pretty happy in the media. Ditto with regards to Hinkley, mainly because if he thinks that he can't beat James Hird in a process, then he's not the sort of person that I want in a club anyway. Given his background, you would think he'd be able to back himself in there. I actually don't mind Nathan Buckley. I think he would be hungry because he's gone back and shown he wants to coach. He just missed he's a very small margin away from being a premiership coach himself. And I think, again, he would have a lot of hunger to be able to show his level. And I think he has a similar aura to James Hird. Obviously, he's not an Essendon person, and that would cause issues. But I think with any coach that we chose, there's not one perfect candidate that ticks all the boxes, right? We were sort of picking in hope. I think I'd probably lean the other way in terms of a new coach, but you would want to have a lot of support around them. I think with the new coaches that we've picked in previous instances, in Knights and Rutten, we've sort of left them hung out to dry in terms of not having the support around them. So that's my current leaning is a hungry assistant coach, but one that's been given a lot of support around them to really grow into the role.
Yeah, I think that's important, support. I mean, I don't think we've got it right in terms of, and I know Bozo's looking at our football department, I don't think we've got it right at the moment. Like in the development area, I don't think, we've sort of had many winners in that area. I don't want to name names there, but yeah, I'm not sure. But look at this year in terms of how many players that have improved, and I don't think there's many.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's another big question, which we can't fix in an hour-long podcast. But look, I guess before we start moving on to the draft prospects, from what you've seen from Essendon so far this year, what sort of attributes do you think Essendon should be prioritising in the draft from the players it's selecting?
I think for mine, it's more good ball users because, as I said earlier, our skills are not very good. And, we've picked up guys like Farrow who can kick the ball well, but we need more good users, I think. I think we need guys that can take contested marks. Now we go down the line and there's just no one there to take a contested mark. And I think also speed is something we don't have players that break the lines. And, in these in this sort of modern football, if you've got line breakers, you're half a chance to put on a good score, and we can't put on a good score, can we?
No, and I think that's part of the reason why we're struggling with this forward handball sort of paradigm that's going on at the moment in the AFL. You sort of need those players running past to create that, and we just don't have that. At the moment, part of that is about execution as well. But you need those players who are able to really break the lines for that forward handball game to work, because you've got to sort of break the zone. And we, as you said, we really don't have that. So I would hope that maybe not in our top pick, but it's sort of those picks that we're going to have around the high teens, low 20s, that we are prioritising sort of that speed on the ball. Well, look, that takes us into looking at this year's draft crop, and we've actually got the main reason I got you on now is we've got the national champs coming up in the next week, so people's attention is going to be turning more and more to this year's draft crop, and we're really going to see the players who are really going to push for those top selections, which Essendon is going to have, really strut their stuff in this competition. So you actually went to the Vic Metro, Vic Country practice match this past weekend, and as you say, you've been to multiple of the under 18 games in the Talent League so far this year. I guess just in general, what's your overall thoughts about the quality of this group compared to last year's?
I think it's on a par with last year, Hume, but to be realistic, we probably have to wait for the champs to take place to get a fuller picture.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it again, because I think with the Talent League, again, because of the nature of it, you've probably got more of a gap between the best and the worst players in teams, and some teams have longer tails in terms of the quality of their players at the Talent League. Whereas in the champs, you're putting together all the elite talent, and so you really get a sense of how good they are going up against the best of the best.
Yeah, and I think the other point is, which is valid, is that the Talent League has been interrupted a fair bit. The last month, most of the top 20, top 40 players have been playing school footy and not Talent League. So it's been hard to discern too much from the Talent League in the last month.
Yeah. It's probably more at the back end of the Talent League where you can get a bit more of a sense of how good these players are, particularly once you get to finals and everyone's involved. Obviously, last year, Sullivan Roby came with a real rush, and that was all solely through the Talent League. And I think everything that we've seen from him suggests that what we saw in the Talent League, has translated to AFL level for the most part. So that it's not to say that looking at what they can do at Talent League doesn't mean anything, but you're right. It's really what happens at the national champs that sets those top players apart. And I think there's a bit of a consensus about who's around the top right now in terms of where people have sort of the top 4 or 5 players, but those things can start getting shaken up with really good champs performances. All right, well, let's get into it. For the first time, you've put together a top 20 draft list in terms of where you have players in regards to where you think they'll rank in terms of their draft position. And in fact, you've actually been able to see all 20 of these players, 19 of these 20. The one you haven't seen there, but we'll touch on that there.
I haven't seen the Cochrane kid from Adelaide. I did ask Jono if there was any money in the Donaldson budget to fly me to Adelaide, but that was a negative. He said, no, we can't make that happen.
Not yet. Maybe next year. We'll get you there. We'll fly you out to see the top talent. But look, what we'll do is we will go through the top 20. We're not going to go through all of them in detail, but I'll sort of go through and we'll stop and talk about the ones that you really want to focus on. Let's start with number 1. You have Kodah Walker as the number 1. Currently playing for Bendigo in the Talent League, 184 centimetre mid, and is tied to the Blues. So what have you seen about Kodah Walker that says he's going to be the number 1 player so far?
Yeah, I've seen him live. I think I saw him about 3 times last year, and I've seen him about another, how many times? 3 times this year. And I might point out too that all these guys I've actually seen live at the ground. That's the only time I really feel comfortable sort of making assessments when I've seen them play with my own eyes. And Kodah Walker could be playing AFL right now. He's that good. He's just so explosive, and he's a real inside and outside player. He can win the contested ball, and of course he spreads really well. He's got amazing pace. So the Blues are lucky with him.
Yeah, indeed. And I guess with the new draft rules, in the past few seasons, we've seen teams not bid on players with the number 1 pick, but you'd be foolish not to unless there was a clear number. If you've got an NGA player expected to go in the top couple, or you think is in the top couple in terms of talent, you'd be silly not to bid on them with pick 1 because you're obviously getting that extra draft pick there. So at the moment, you'd have Cody Walker's name being the first called out and sort of generating those draft picks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think so. Ahead of Dougie Cochran from Port Adelaide.
Yeah, and he's obviously missed a lot of footy this year with injury, so we haven't seen much of him. But I think from all reports, he's right up there, and I think he's probably one that if he was actually playing this year, he could be more in that conversation for that first pick. It's going to be interesting with the Walker pick. Carlton keep winning games. In many ways, it sucks for us to have to watch Carlton win, but they're also probably making it harder for them to have to match a Walker bid. So, they might be cutting off their nose to spite their face a little bit.
Yeah, it's a blessing in disguise, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, let's move on to who you've got at number 3. And this is probably the player that most Essendon fans have been really focused on because he's probably, if Essendon finish last, he's at this stage probably the most likely name to be coming to Essendon. And that's Harry Van Hattum, who's 205 centimetre ruck forward playing for Northern Knights. What have you seen about Harry Van Hattum, Rick, that should make Essendon fans excited if we do end up with him?
Yeah, there's a lot to be optimistic about. I remember the first time I saw him was last year at a game at Preston. I actually went there to watch the Calder Cannons and a couple of our NGA boys in Suede and Alachka. But I saw this hulking, blonde-haired guy doing warm-ups, and I just thought, oh, my God, I don't think I've ever seen a junior this big. And then the game started, and in the first quarter, he just jumped over a couple of blokes, a big pack, and took this contested mark. And I just thought, how can a guy of that size have such an amazing leap? And I found out this year when they tested they tested all the Victorian draftees, potential draftees, and Van Hattum ended up being having the best vertical jump of any of the Victorians. He's still only 17, which is a remarkable thing. And I liken him to Luke Jackson. So he follows up when the ball hits the ground from the ruck contest. And he really, he's spoken about this, seeing himself as another mid. His competitiveness is sort of off the charts. He just hates to lose. He's worked also on his forward craft with Rocker. I think the other, and that's Anthony Rocker. The other thing, which I think we talked about pre-show, and was whether all this will translate to the AFL. That's always one of the big questions. He played 2 games for the Australian Academy against grown men. So he played against the North Melbourne VFL and then the Richmond VFL. And, while he didn't have big sort of possession games, he wasn't sort of overawed, and he did have fairly good contests with both Richmond and North Melbourne ruckman. So that's encouraging. He has played a lot of school footy lately, and it's really, for me, it's hard to get a gauge on that because not all the kids are physically developed at school footy. But yeah, when you add everything up, the pros and the cons, there's definitely a whole lot more pros, and I'd love to have him at the club.
Yeah, I guess, I think people are already starting to imagine him in an Essendon jumper, and I think given where our ruck stocks are, I think Nick Bryan's showing a fair bit this year, but probably after that, there's a lot of question marks there, and the fact that, he's starting to develop that forward craft could be really handy. And again, we've seen the impact that a Luke Jackson can have at AFL level with Freo this year, and obviously what he did for Melbourne in their premiership year. There's obviously been a reluctance to take rucks right at the top end of the draft unless they've got supreme talent like a Luke Jackson or like a Max Gawn. And I think the way people are talking about him, it sounds like he's potentially on that same level as well.
Yeah, he is very much like Luke Jackson. I think he's sort of a guy that could take over a game. That's what I see.
Yeah. Moving on to your number 4, we have Arki Butler, 182 centimetre mid forward from the Sandy Dragons. He's really put his name up there quite early with some pretty spectacular performances at Talent League level, particularly in terms of his ability to kick goals sort of from that half forward midfield space. And obviously, Essendon fans certainly had some raised eyebrows when Arki's Instagram post, getting behind James Hird back to Essendon did the rounds. So I guess he's probably the other one that Essendon fans would have heard of, and he's probably the other one that's at the moment really in that conversation for Essendon's first pick, whether we end up, last or second last. What can you tell me about Arki?
Yeah, he's just behind Van Hattum for me. He's got so much balance. He could walk the tightrope. He marks well overhead. His kicking is good. He's got this great sort of core strength and shrugs off tackles. As you said, he does kick goals. He is a bit like Toby Green. He sort of runs like him. So he can play mid, but he can also go forward and kick goals. And in round one, there was a good example of that. At the Talent League, he had 26 disposals, 17 contested, 5 clearances and got 4 goals out of that. His first game for the Australian Academy this year, he finished with 14 disposals and 4 clearances. So he was playing against men then and didn't, he was comfortable at that level. Yesterday, he did something pretty amazing, and I'll have this footage on my Patreon. Actually, a snippet of it is up there now. What he did yesterday, he roved this ball off a marking contest. He was running flat out, just timed it perfectly, and then increased his speed a little bit once he grabbed the ball, and then laced out a 20-metre kick to the full forward. And not to be content with that, he did the same thing again from a ruck contest. So yeah, he's just got some tricks and some X factor.
Yeah, you're right, and he sounds like the exact sort of player that we need. We sort of need that goal kicking midfielder, or we know that half forwards are really valuable in today's AFL. We've spoken a lot about how we would really like to get Zach Bailey to the club, for example, someone who can go through the midfield but can also go forward and kick goals. And I think, given where we are on the ladder, we probably are going to miss out on Zach Bailey. So again, it sounds like that if we do miss out on a Van Hattum, a good consolation prize is going to be Arki Butler. He would fit in well with what we are trying, what the weaknesses of the current side are.
Definitely, yeah, it would be a really good fit. Yeah, goal kicking mid. Yeah.
Indeed. Look, on to your number 5, and that's Ethan Drever from the Western Victorian Rebels. He's a 188 centimetre mid. What can you tell us about Drever?
Yeah, I'm very big on this kid. People should write this name down. I think he could end up being the best player in the draft. When I look at him, to me he seems like a right-footed Bontempelli. He's got this beautiful sort of sideways movement, a nice side step, and even when he gets tackled, just like the Bont, he can get his hands free and get the ball out. And he's got that sort of manic defensive desperation. He's just consistently got it done this year. He's averaged 29 disposals in the Talent League and 6.3 inside 50s. So, I'm really big on Ethan Drever.
Yeah, that's good. And I guess, he's one that really where the good performances, the champs could sort of push him up into that top 3 or 4 level there. On to your number 6, and that's, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but Kodah Edwards from South Australia, 183 centimetre midfielder. We've obviously had some good luck with South Australian midfielders in the past. We had Dyson Sharp taken last year. What have you seen with regards to Edwards that has you rate him so highly?
Yeah, just like Sharp, he's captain of the South Australian under-18s. He's always, obviously I haven't seen him for that long. He's only been on the radar probably this year for me, but I'm told that he's always been a really elite mid that can go forward and kick goals. I saw him play for the academy this year, and he's just such a solid, sort of strong kid. So really powerful midfielder. There's a bit of Sullivan Roby about him. When he goes forward, a bit of Cam Rayner or Zerha, that sort of explosive, powerful forward. So a bit of X factor there. In one of those academy games against North Melbourne, he got 23 disposals, 4 clearances and 1 goal. So just like you were saying with Butler, this guy has got the potential to play midfield, but also go forward and kick goals. So he'd really be a good acquisition.
That's it. And I think, as much as we're probably moving out of the range of Essendon's first pick, there's obviously, I think, just sort of progressing ahead. You've got talk that Jordan Ridley might leave. You've got the likelihood that Zach Merritt will leave. You're going to have, a clutch of picks around the late teens, early 20s because of the bidding rules, because of where our second round pick is going to end up, the potential of an extra pick through support from the AFL. there's a chance we could bundle some picks up and move up the order. Just I guess philosophically, I think teams might be reluctant to do that, given that in future years things are going to be diluted by Tasmania. They might not want to miss out on this last chance to get top end picks, but you never know. So, as much as these players are probably moving out of the range of what we're looking at, it's still important to sort of keep an eye on them. Moving on to your number 7 in Jordan Knapp. He's from Eastern Rangers, 179 midfielder. Tell us about Jordan.
Yeah. So I saw a lot of him last year, which was his bottom age year. To me, looking at him, the player that I liken him to is George Wardlaw. He's just able to find that extra gear and go manically at the contest, win the contested ball. But he also spreads extremely well, probably better than Wardlaw. And this year, he showed promise last year, but this year he's taken it to another level and he's averaging 28 disposals in the Talent League. So, I really like him a lot. And, I wouldn't be disappointed if we ended up with him.
Yeah, nice. I'm going to not talk too much about the next one. Noah Williams, 178 from Geelong, a medium defender. He was your number 8. But number 9, Will Malady from Gippsland, 190 centimetre forward. What do you like about Will?
Yeah, he's a good sort of second or third forward, and we always like second or third forwards at Essendon. I seem to recruit them a lot. He's really good overhead, agile, and defensive pressure is one of his strong suits. I remember, I won't forget this, the game against Australian Academy against North Melbourne VFL at Arden Street this year. He ran, the ball was in the forward line, then they got it out, North Melbourne. But Melody ran 35 metres, sprinted 35 metres to chase the North Melbourne bloke and sort of didn't get to him per se and tackle him, but sort of got a hand on him. So it was just an extremely desperate run, which really impressed me. He does. Sorry?
Yeah, that's it. And I think it can happen a lot with the top end talented players, is that they often don't do the defensive actions as well, because they've been the best player in their team, for a decade leading up to when they get to this point, and they haven't had to really do that. So I guess when you see that from a player that is, at the level that he is, that's a really impressive sign, because we've seen a lot of players, reach the AFL and not have those defensive thoughts in their mind.
Yeah,
so that's a real big tick.
You're right, him. It really stood out, He does kick goals as well. He's got a 6-goal haul in the Talent League this year. He averages 5 marks a game, so he's got good hands. And the thing about him is that he's still 17. So he's been playing against North Melbourne and Richmond VFL, and he's still only 17. So I'm really excited about him.
Yeah. On to your number 10, Harvie Cook, 176 Northern Knights player who's a mid-forward. What can you tell me about Harvie?
Yeah, look, he's not ranked very highly by other people, but I've got to give you something different, Humi. So this is a point of difference in Harvie
This
Cook.
is your bolter, is it?
What's that?
This is your bolter.
This is a bolter, correct. We've got the first bolter of the night. So I saw him set the Hawthorn training ground alight, not literally, unfortunately, but he actually stole the show yesterday. We don't talk about Arsenal and Hawthorn or anything like that. We don't want to wish any ill will on them. But yeah, no. Harvie Cook. So he's averaging 24 disposals as a mid who goes forward. 7 tackles. That's an amazing stat, isn't it? And he's also getting a lot of frees as well, almost 2 frees a game, and he goes inside 56 times. One game this year, he got 10 tackles and 6 clearances. Another game, he got 30 disposals and 8 clearances. Wait till I tell you who he reminds me of. He's good at the sort of repeat efforts, the sideways movements. He breaks tackles, as I touched on, great at clearances. But the guy who he reminds me of is Zach Butters, just with his attack on the ball. And when he goes forward, he's very good at kicking goals. So almost like Cozzy Pickett, very dangerous close to goal. So I'm very bullish on Harvie Cook.
That's a good one, and I think that's a name people should be keeping an eye or an ear out from in case he does bomb it. You will have heard it here first if he does jump up the draft rankings. We're actually going to talk about next number 18, but I'll just go through your 11 to 17. You've got Ethan Herbert, 200 centimetre South Australian ruck, Kobe LaCroix, 193 centimetre forward from WA, 13 Clancy Snell, 196 defender from Gippsland, 14 Harrison Chapman, 189 from Eastern, sort of a mid or a wing player, 15 Gus Texera, 181 Sandy Mid. Number 16, Khaled El Suki, he's 175 Western Jets forward mid. I think he's tied to the Bulldogs. I also discovered the other week that he lives on my street. Given he's tied to the Bulldogs, I won't go bother him because I don't think we'll end up with him. Number 17, Marlon Neoculus, 168 centimetre Gippsland forward. But the next one you wanted to really talk about was your number 18 in Will Antrobus, 182 centimetre defender from Dandenong. What do you like about Will?
Yeah, Will Antrobus. You remember Tony Antrobus, Humie?
The name is familiar.
Yeah, well, he's got nothing to do with him. But he's a beautiful left footer who plays at half back. He's great. He's a bit like Lawson Humphreys from Geelong. Very composed, good one-on-one, will win the one-on-one contest. And with his nice left foot, he can kick a goal as well.
Very good, very good. At number 19, you had Gabriel Patterson, 184 centimetre South Australian forward. And then rounding out your top 20 is Harrison Leader, 193 centimetre forward from Northern. Tell me a bit about Harrison.
Mate, this is the second bowler for the night. Once again, he's only 17, turns 18 in December. He looks a bit like Caddy. He's got the blonde hair, and he's very brave when he's going for marks. Yesterday, I saw him play, and he ran backwards with the flow of the ball. Really sort of dangerous sort of stuff, but took the mark. So he's really good overhead. A bit like Caddy, unfortunately, he does kick poorly for goal. In one game this year, he got 3 goals, 6. But yeah, he's a good mark. He always takes front position. In fact, he averages 6 marks a game. So he's a bit of a bolter, but he just shows that something, the way he attacks the ball and the way he's able to clunk it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, look, Rick, thanks so much for going through your top 20 with me. Obviously, there's probably some players on the outside that have been unlucky to miss out, and with good performances throughout the rest of the year, they'll probably make their way into that. So I'm sure we'll have you back on at some stage to talk about where you have your rankings. Maybe maybe post champs, we'll revisit your rankings and see where things stand before we head into the draft period proper. Before we sort of start wrapping things up for the night, I do want to touch on the next generation academy players that are linked to Essendon and what you've seen from them. Obviously, due to injury, probably the two most high profile ones in Blake Justice, who's draft eligible this year, and Kobe Buick, who is draft eligible next year. You haven't been able to actually see them play so far this year. From what you know, when can we expect to see either of them back on the field?
Yeah, I'll start with Justice. So he had a serious hamstring injury, so he didn't actually get to the line. Hasn't played any games this year. But he's been his rehab's been overseen by Essendon, so he's been down at the club pretty much weekly, and they've been looking after him and taken a really cautious approach with him. He could have played yesterday for Vic Metro, but once again they erred on the side of caution. So he'll play his first game of the year on Saturday for Kodah. So it's just been, I've had a little bit to do with him. It's just been really disappointing for him. He set himself up for a big year. He had a big off season where he worked on his power, his sprinting. So it's been disappointing. So hopefully he can get back into it pretty quickly. Just on Justice before we move on to Buick, if he played, based on what you've seen of him last year, if he played maybe at a similar or expected improvement level, where do you think he'd currently be sitting in your draft rankings? He'd be sitting firmly in the top 20, Ian. Yeah, no doubt about that. He did enough last year. I reckon definitely he should be a top 20 thing if it wasn't for his injuries. Very good. So hopefully he'll get a chance to show what he's capable of during the next couple of months with Champs and Talent League. And then obviously the great white hope, Kobe Buick, who I think fans have been, counting on for probably the last at least 5 years with the way some people, Cal Toomey and Ed Pascoe, I know, have both been really big on Kobe. When can we expect him back? Yeah, so Kobe has played a little bit of footy this year, but wasn't at his best because he did have an interrupted preseason. But he did string a few games together for Calder, sort of playing halfback and playing a little bit of midfield. The plan was because he's a bottom major, was to ease him into midfield and have him sort of playing full-time mid by the end of this year. But he picked up a back injury, so he's missed something like 6 weeks now. So they thought it might have been stress fractures, but unfortunately it wasn't. So He was close to playing on the weekend for his local club, which is Strathmore. But he'll definitely resume. Well, not definitely. He's likely. He's feeling better, and he's likely to resume on Saturday for Calder alongside Justice.
That's really pleasing to hear. Let's touch on some NGA players that have been able to show their wares. One who's going to be draft eligible this year and a couple for next year. The first one that it's started to be talked about for this year is Jed Name. Tell us about Jed and where do you see him getting picked up, if at all, at this stage? What have you seen from him?
Yeah, he has played for Calder, but has also gone back to his local EDFL club as well. So he's not sort of a certainty by any means this year. He's more of a sort of 50-50, I suppose. But if, for example, the AFL give us a generous assistant package, we might have extra rookie spots or Cat Bs or whatever. But he is an NGA kid, and he has shown some real X factor stuff. He's quite tall, so that sort of has worked for him, but also worked against him in that he gets thrown around. He's sort of played pretty much everywhere, down back, midfield, forward. I think probably his best position is wing, and he's got some tricks. He's very quick. What he loves to do is run around the man on the mark. He does that quite a lot. He's a good sort of kick for goal. So he's exciting. He's not the finished product, but there's just some sort of X factor there. So I'm quite optimistic that maybe they might give him a shot.
Yeah, do you think it's more of a national draft or a rookie at this stage for him?
Yeah, definitely a rookie or a Cat B, I think, Hume.
Yeah. And then on to some of the 2027 prospects. Mustafa Darwish, he's been doing quite well for Calder. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, so he's sort of a midfielder wing, and he goes forward a little bit. So he's very clean with ground balls. He's a nice kick. If he gets an opportunity near goal, he'll kick it. So he just shows a lot of poise and a fair bit of class for an underager. So there's a lot of talk about him. He's not sort of quite at the Buick level, but at this stage, I'd expect him to definitely go in the national draft in 2027.
Yep, that's good. And then the other one Essendon fans have been hearing about is Tavita Roden, David Roden's son. So obviously he has father-son with Port Adelaide, as well as being in our academy. And just as an aside, I think if you're a father-son, you shouldn't be academy eligible, because I think academies are trying to get players from outside AFL background. So I personally, from my where I stand, I actually don't think we should have access to him, but that's the rules, and we do. What have you seen from Roden this year?
Yeah, so I've watched him, like Buick, I've watched him for a couple of years. And this year, again, as a bottom major for Calder, he really has stepped up a level. And so even in the last month, he's been getting a lot more possessions. So he's a midfielder, plays a little bit of halfback sometimes, but he's got that explosive sort of acceleration from the stoppage. So he's quite exciting to watch and really drives the legs, and he's very good at clearances.
Excellent. So there's obviously going to be a few options for us, and I guess with Buick and Darwish and Roden potentially, we could be insulated somewhat from Tassie coming in and taking the crop, the pick of the draft crop. We could have some protected players because of that.
Yeah, well that's right. I do have a really left field NGA kid that no one has ever mentioned yet. Hume, if you want to hear about that.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. So he's not a father-son, but his dad was at Essendon, and back in 1996, his dad was Dwayne, or still is his dad, Dwayne Armstrong, the American footballer who Kevin Sheedy brought over. Does it ring a bell?
Vaguely, I have a very, very small memory of that, but it's not the first player I've ever.
Dwayne was a gridiron player, and surprise, found it hard to adapt to footy. He was on our supplementary list and didn't end up playing a senior game. He's got two kids. One of them, the older kid, is going quite well, but the younger kid I saw play on the weekend, and he's sort of in the Buick name sort of age group. His name is Maddox Armstrong. I really liked the look of the kid, half back, a nice intercept mark. So that's a bit of a left field NG.
Interesting. So I guess we'll have to start tracking him potentially if he does come on. So nice little snippet there from you, Rick. Definitely a name I'll start to keep an eye out from. Well, look, Rick, thanks so much for your time tonight. It's always a pleasure to spend some time with you and talk Essendon, and obviously today talk about the upcoming national draft. Before we go, you mentioned it a couple of times tonight, but you've started your Patreon the past year, and it has been a great resource of clips and information about Essendon training that all Essendon fans would enjoy. And again, especially with how Essendon's going, you will be posting a lot more draft content there. I guess just as a taster, what are some of the things you've got coming up for your subscribers, particularly as National Champs kicks into gear?
Yeah, I've got a big week or so coming up. I've got some high-definition footage of all of the my top 20 draft prospects, except for Cochrane. So that's all exclusive footage never seen before. So I'll be posting that soon. Of course, I have my Essendon main training report, which will come out in a few days. And I'll also we just talked about NGAs. I've got some new footage of our Essendon NGAs and father-son prospects. So that's also about to come out. I've also got one more thing, Ian. I've got an interview with an Essendon Football Club insider, which I'll be recording in a couple of days. So I can't say too much yet, but that should be a good listen.
Excellent. Really looking forward to that and all the stuff you've been putting out. You've been doing a mountain of work, and I've really certainly appreciated it. Not being able to get to training or to all these talent games myself. So yeah, it's a great resource. And I guess if you're a Don the State listener, your Patreon is something that people should be checking out, and there will be a link to that in the description of this episode. So do check that out. Thanks so much for your time tonight, mate. Any final words from you?
No, that's a bit about it, mate. I'm looking forward to the draft season. As you said, we could end up with a swag of picks, and we could really come out of this draft period as winners again. So that would be lovely.
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. Well, look, that will do us for this evening. I'll be back with a special guest this Thursday to preview the Melbourne clash, as Jono will be in the air flying to Old Blighty. We've got a couple of other special things in store coming up in the next few weeks at Don the Stat. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. And until then, stay safe and go Dons. All right.